What's doing, everybody? Today is Thursday, June 26th. President Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth obliterate the fake news media. A communist wins the Democrat primary in New York City. I've got Senator Eric Schmitt and Breitbart's editor-in-chief Alex Marlow joining me on the podcast. I'm Alec Lace. This is the Alec Lace Show.
The American family is under attack. Parents are the underdog of this nation. Your children are being indoctrinated. That's right. Your children. They do not belong to the state. They do not belong to the school system. They belong to you, the parents, as a blessing from God our Father. So let's preserve, protect, and fight for the American family together. You're listening to the Alec Lace Show. The future is family.
All right, let's do it. Welcome, everybody, to the Alec Lace Show. I'm happy and honored, as always, to be here with you guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching the broadcast as it streams live on Rumble, please get down there, hit the share button. Let's get as many people into this live broadcast. Share the link on all your socials. Don't forget to follow wherever you're watching. I got a great program for you guys today. My friend, Breitbart editor-in-chief Alex Marlow joins me, and I've got Senator Eric Schmitt from Missouri on the podcast today. So it's going to be a good one. If you missed out on Tuesday's broadcast, I had Dinesh D'Souza. He's always great. Always drops a ton of knowledge. Yeah, he's got a great way of wording all this stuff. He's one of the best in the business. So if you missed out on my interview with Dinesh, go flip it back one episode and take a listen. Pete Hegseth this morning ripped into the fake news media and really kind of just articulated what's been on my mind and the frustration with this fake news media. And as I call them, they are activists, right? I do not consider these people journalists whatsoever. It's obvious what the game plan here is, and this is why I don't even understand. I haven't been able to understand why President Donald Trump, why even Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt give these people the time of day. And it's interesting to listen to them say, like, by doing so, it's freedom of the press. If Trump, they look at it as a threat to democracy. If President Trump doesn't call on these news media sites, just like we were hearing, if you watched, Joe Rogan had Bernie Sanders on his show. It was a great interview. If you missed it, you got to check that out. But, Bernie Sanders starts talking about it, and it's that fear-mongering thing of President Donald Trump is suing 60 Minutes. And so Bernie Sanders is like, oh, my God, when you have a president suing the media, it's intimidation. They don't want him to cover them bad. So he's suing them. He's suing 60 Minutes because they manipulated the interview with Kamala Harris in what was a fraud. They did that to help her win. That's the actual. And he's like, oh, they have so much integrity. They're such a 60 Minutes is such a well-known. What does that matter? You got caught. You got caught cheating to try to help a candidate win an election. So Joe Rogan wasn't having it. He pushed back on that. Bernie Sanders looked very bad in that interview. He couldn't answer any questions. He was proven wrong so many times. And it's very easy to do. And that's what this media has done. The media has been coming out and coming after President Donald Trump for so long. And now I think 60 Minutes, CBS there, or ABC, has offered, I think, $20 million now. They offered 15. Now they're offering $20 million. They want to settle that. He also talked about the Stephanopoulos getting sued. These people, when you come out with this fraudulent stuff and when you manipulate the mind of the American voter at the time, and then you do that with President Donald Trump, of course he's going to blast you. This isn't a media. This isn't an honest media. And anybody that's not filled with hate over President Donald Trump knows this. So I want to give you the clip here. Well, first of all, Trump really went after this Natasha Bertrand yesterday. Natasha Bertrand should be fired from CNN. I watched her for 3 days doing fake news. She should immediately be reprimanded and then thrown out like a dog. I mean, she lied on the laptop from Hell's Story. And now, so Trump has lost it. Today he's calling for all these people to be fired. And how could you not? He's watched these people lie and manipulate everything from the Trump-Russia collusion with the fake dossier, and then the laptop story in 2020, which completely undermined his re-election bid. They hid that from the public, working together with social media sites, Facebook and Twitter. I mean, what happened? And I'm like, it makes what happened with Watergate look so small because it's the Democrats that are working together with the fake news media. Kamala Harris, and I've covered this on the show too many a time, Kamala Harris, it wasn't like she didn't know that 60 Minutes manipulated the interview to make her sound smarter. She knew. Of course she knew. She was there in the interview. She knew what answers she gave. This was a coordinated attack by the media with the Democrat candidate. And for that, not only should ABC be sued, or whoever the hell runs this 60 Minutes, not only should they be sued, they should lose their journalistic license. If that's possible, they should no longer be allowed to practice news, at least political news. They should be banned from the White House, banned from the Pentagon. Let me give you a clip of Pete Hegseth this morning, really ripping into them. Take a listen.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, fly a plane for 36 hours? Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done the story how hard that is? Have we done it 2 or 3 times so that American people understand? How about how difficult it is to shoot a drone from an F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35? Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery? Or how hard it is to refuel midair? Giving the American people an understanding of how complex and sophisticated this mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that because of the hatred of this press corps are undermined because your people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible.
And Pete Hegseth's 100,000% right. This is about making President Donald Trump look bad. That is the whole key. That's what the plan has been, and it's all a coordinated attack against him. And they make it, and they all do it together. So that they make it sound like, Trump, everybody else, it's just Trump. He's he's crying about the press coverage, the bad press. But if you look at the minutes of coverage on some of this stuff, you can clearly see, like during the election cycle, like ABC, NBC, CNN, all combined, the coverage was 95% negative about Trump and 85% positive about Kamala Harris. You don't have to be a scientist to see the bias that's going on here. This is supposed to be a fair and free press. It's not fair at all. It's all tilted on one side, and we all see it. So that's really the major thing going on right now. And Trump has every right in the world because he pulled off this attack on the nuclear sites, which was a success, and they're trying to undermine it. Oh, they moved the uranium out before Trump attacked. And, I'll tell you what, right now, they're executing all these people in Iran. According to Fox News here, Iran intensifies internal security crackdown after U.S.-Israel strikes. Authorities are reportedly carrying out mass arrests and executions of alleged spies. Now, you would imagine Iran is saying, how the hell did they know where everything was? They took out all the top generals. The Israeli intelligence had spies inside high levels in the Iran government there, and so now they're trying to, close their own leaks that they're having over there. So if it wasn't such a success, you wouldn't see that kind of backlash from Iran. Then again, we don't know anything from inside the Iran state media because the Iran state media is very similar to the American state media here. They lie, and they're in the business of lying. These are, and again, you can't say it enough. They're not journalists in America. They are activists. And that is exactly what they are. Now, right before I get Alex Marlow on here to talk more about this stuff, I wanted to talk on this communist candidate that won in New York City, this Zoran Mamdani. unbelievable to so many people in New York to see this happen, that you could have this guy who is anti-America, this Islamic guy who is a total outright spoken socialist. Here's some of the things that this Islamic socialist, Zohran Mamdani, has previously called for. We know during the George Floyd riots, he was a big proponent of defunding the police. So he has called for abolishing the NYPD, abolishing prisons, abolishing medical bills, abolishing private health insurance, banning all guns, legalizing sex work, safe injection sites, ending cash bail, decriminalizing drug possession, ending sentencing enhancements, ending all cooperation with ICE. And what's fascinating to me about all this stuff, now this guy, this is legit. This isn't like when they try to say Trump, like you'll hear in the big, beautiful bill, they'll lie and manipulate what's in it. This is this guy's own words. This is this guy's own tweets talking about all this stuff. I mean, he is proud of all of these ideas. And this is a socialist utopia is what they want. And now it looks like they're going to get it. And it's frightening to see it. He talks about, who in the world is going to want to be get into the police department in New York City when this happens? I mean, this is going to be just insane to watch all go down. And it's funny to me too, because white liberal women are the ones that put this guy in the spot that he's in right now in New York City. And it's amazing that you have so many white liberal women in this country who want to smash the patriarchy, who hate the idea of the nuclear family, but they support Sharia law. They support these Islamic religious people who have their women dressed in a sheet. In the summertime, you see them walking around. They're all dressed up. They're not allowed to even show their face in public. The women in the Islamic world are treated like complete dog shit. But somehow the feminists, the white liberal women, they are champions of this. You see them in wherever you see these gatherings. You see it in Little Somalia up there in frickin' Minnesota. You have these women that are completely oppressed, but somehow the feminists are on board with it. They promote it, and they think, "Oh, we are a fan of Islam." It's the white Christians that we hate. It's fascinating. If you have a wife who stays home to raise the kids, they call that oppression in these white liberal women. Oh my God, that poor woman. She's staying home and raising her children. That's oppressive. Oh, we love the Islamic people. We love what they're doing. Well, we want to vote them in. We love what they're doing. They got their wife chained to the radiator at home. They're like, oh, that's okay. That's their preference. So you can never figure this stuff out. You see the one picture of the guy, and it's a perfect picture of the guy at the beach. He's in the ocean with his kid, and you got the woman dressed in the full hijab, or whatever they call that thing, full costume on, standing on the hot beach. That they're all for, the feminists. That's great. We want that in New York. But if you have a family, a mother, father, and children, oh, no. We don't need it. We hate that prescribed nuclear family. Comical and sad to watch. So I want to get into all of this here. Also, Trump was at the NATO, and I'll talk about, too, how he defended Bibi Netanyahu. So let's do this. I got Alex Marlow. He's one of the best. Breitbart is one of the best to go to. I know Fox News, a lot of people will go to, but I love Breitbart News. You guys hear me tell you that all the time. I like Breitbart News. I like the Bongino Report. My man Matt Palumbo over there does a great job with that, so I check that in the mornings. Always go to Breitbart News. As well as X to get my information. And if you're not doing so, you should be. Also, he has the Alex Marlow Show. He does it every day. He's been doing this for, 2 decades worth. So he's very good. And I love having him on the podcast. I'm grateful to get him. And let's do it. And after this, don't forget, I got Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri joining me right after. Here we go. Let's bring on Alex.
Hi, I'm Emily. And I'm at the White House with my dad. And you're watching The Alec Lay Show.
You're listening to The Alec Lay Show. The future is family.
All right, joining me now, Alex Marlow. Welcome back to the Alec Lace Show.
Alec, always nice to see you. Thanks for having me on again.
Well, it's always an honor to have you here. I just wanted to get your take on so many of these things that are going on, and start with the fake news media that Trump obliterated the Iran nuclear facilities and the fake news media here recently. But everybody, Israel claiming that the site was obliterated, Trump saying it, our Secretary of Defense saying it, CNN still trying to cast doubt on the success of the mission. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned CNN. Yeah, it's the same people who said that Iran is not an imminent threat also said that the attack wasn't effective enough. So they're never going to be satisfied. It's really interesting to track this one because so many people are so self-interested right now, Alec, in proving that they're right or that Trump is always wrong, that they won't tell the truth about what's happening. And it's very anti-democratic. We elected this guy as a president. He won the popular vote. He won every single swing state. He overcame all the lawfare, getting shot in the head. Now he's here and he does something that is brilliant. It was a brilliant attack. It was true Top Gun stuff. I mean, we were talking about, $1 billion of equipment, pilots in the air for, I don't know how long, 15 hours at a time, clandestine refueling operations. They're hitting targets, the size of a minivan, maybe. It is truly out of a movie, and we should be marveling at it, and we should all be celebrating as a country. And instead, what are we doing? We're pointing out, well, was it not good enough, or should we not have done it to begin with, or maybe we should do more. That's all silly. It was a great move by President Trump. He's the man for the moment.
And that's why I don't really even consider them journalists. I just consider them activists is really what they are. Because that's why it's like, no matter what Trump does, they're going to look for the angle that goes against him. They're never going to give him credit. We know that. That's why, a lot of me wishes he would just tune them people out and just stop calling on them because he knows what their agenda is. They have an agenda and it's to paint him in a bad light. And like you said, this whole thing, if this was made into like a special forces movie, nobody would believe it. Everyone would think it was all fictional, the way that it was pulled off. But for CNN to try to minimize it doesn't help anybody except the people that have Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, it does. And so you got to keep an eye on two groups of people. There's the warmonger group of people who want us to do more boots on the ground regime change stuff, which there's no appetite for that in this country. And then there are the people who don't want Trump to do anything because or if Trump does choose to do something, they have to announce it's wrong. We cover the first group, but we also got to be careful that we don't want anyone pushing him to do more than he's already done. He did the perfect amount, as he often does. Alec, this has been his policy the entire time. Remember his first administration where his domestic agenda got stalled, but his foreign policy agenda was nearly perfect. Taking out Soleimani, taking out Baghdadi with the beautiful dogs going through the walls. And he put a lot of pressure on Russia. That's why Russia didn't invade any new territory during Trump's presidency after they did during Bush and Obama and Biden. And it's one of these things where Trump is the expert in this regard, and we should trust him on a lot of this stuff because he's earned it, not because you always trust the president. Some presidents don't earn your trust, but in these types of operations, Trump is batting 1,000, and that matters to me. That counts.
And that's the point, because by saying I don't think they should call on CNN, people say, oh, you don't want them to be questioned on anything. And that's not the truth. The truth is you want honest journalism is what you're looking for. Like, don't do it with that.
He gets
agenda.
everyone right, and they never give him credit, and they always just try to poke holes in it. So it does reveal that they're driven by their agenda, not by getting out the facts, because the facts are overwhelmingly positive in this case. That's not their angle. Their angle is, what did we get wrong? And that's very anti-American. It's very anti-democratic because we want to root for this country first. And when a guy wins, and it's not like there wasn't a lot of us on the right, Alec, when Osama bin Laden died, that we were attacking Obama that day. Maybe we thought he overstated a couple things or something or other, tried to milk it for political goals. Maybe we sniped for that reason, but we weren't saying that was a bad job. Like, no one said bad job killing bin Laden.
Yeah, proud to be an American that day. I remember it very vividly, and I was at work when that happened. Yeah, but to the point of, like, despite what the fake news is saying about it, our enemies around this world watched and saw what happened and saw what our capabilities were. And there's no doubt they were raising eyebrows about what, and that's just one piece of what we were capable of. And I think that sends a strong message to these people, be it Russia, China, whoever that seeks to do us harm in the world. I think they took a pretty solid note of what the hell just happened and are looking at each other saying, okay, maybe we may need to redirect what we're doing here with the Americans.
Yeah, so China buys a lot of Iranian oil, and Russia has been supportive of the Iranian regime, and they really tried to keep this at arm's length. They did not want to pitch in, they did not want to help out. Russia in particular seemed to be assiduously avoiding helping Iran in this. They knew that if they would just be betting on a losing horse, that America and Israel were going to wage a devastating attack, and Iran was going to be the loser to one extent or another. We'll see how long this goes on. We'll see what happens next in the region. It's going to be it's always messy, but a lot of Iran's usual adversaries, who are our adversaries, they still stayed clear. And that sends a very powerful signal to the rest of the world that when Trump is ready to make some moves, that you do not want to be on the wrong side of him. And that's exactly what we want out of our president.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you make of it? Now, the first thing they tried to roll with was it was unconstitutional. What he did was unconstitutional, and that got shot down. We've seen this Al Green, who's just a political theater guy, try to do the impeachment, and that got shot down. But also, the thing that was eye-opening about that is 128 Democrats voted to not bring that measure to the floor. What do you read into that? Because to be honest, I would expect them just to say, "Hey, we'll impeach him for anything," but they didn't do that. 128 of their own party said this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I was surprised too. They want to impeach Trump all the time, but some of them are more conscientious of politics. And a lot of the politics throughout the country, you're going to see the left run to their base, like what we saw in New York City earlier this week, where they vote for a socialist a mayoral nominee for the Democrat Party who is just not in tune with basic American values. Which I cheered on, by the way, because I'm an accelerationist in that regard. I want to see what he does with this experiment. I bet it's going to fail. And I bet it's going to be unbelievable content. But that's where a lot of the party's going. But other parts of the country, they can't indulge these fantasies, these performance art fantasies. There's no capital politically to impeach Trump. Trump's popular right now. It was a popular move. Impeaching him for something that was popular, that is clearly legal. To suggest that the president of the United States does not have the ability to defend America's national security interests around the world is absurd. And it would mean we should have impeached Obama many times, because Obama had many bombings like this. They weren't this devastating or as effective. And the way he treated Iran, he just sent them pallets of money. But he would engage in a lot of this stuff with Hillary Clinton, and they weren't impeached for things like that. They brought regime change in Libya, and it went backwards. It was a terrible idea. But they weren't impeached for those things. They weren't impeached over Benghazi. I mean, for them to give us that talking point would have been a huge mistake, and enough Democrats that we're not going to do that. So we would have crushed them on that narrative. And enough of them were smart enough to know that. But I was surprised that how many of them figured that out, because they have this history of just always going with the most left-wing possibility out of the option set.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me. And just to the point of Obama, like, this is a guy that just in 2016 alone dropped over 26,000 bombs on like 6 different countries or 7 countries, whatever it was.
26,000 impeachments, Alec. That's what we needed. That's what we deserved then, right?
But also at the same time, he deported over 5 million people, 75% of which never got any due process whatsoever. And if you ask the liberals who the greatest president of all time is, they'll say it's Obama. So he deported people without any due process, and he dropped bombs all over the place. But somehow he's better, and Trump did far less. But it brings to the point too. You also have the grandstanding and the theatrics with the Democrats when it comes to these deportations, and they're trying to stop Trump, even though now the Supreme Court ruled that Trump can ship these guys to countries as long as they'll take them. And now you have them saying, "Oh, we're going to defy the Supreme Court," and somehow that's okay.
Well, you got a commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That's the president. So he's got a lot of executive authority to wage military operations. And I understand that why you need a declaration of war to have an actual war. But I think we're talking about wide scale, where you're deploying battalions of troops, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars potentially allocated around the world. That stuff is much more expensive. It's much more it benefits the country in general to have a broader check and balance in that regard. But to act like the commander-in-chief can't do a strategic bombing when you have overt threats from a enemy power against American bases and American personnel in the region is absurd. And there's not a court in the land, even the left-wing ones, who would suggest that any of that's unconstitutional. This has already been established. They're just grasping at straws because they have nothing else. They have no power now, Alec. All they have is the ability to complain on Bluesky, the app. That's all they've got.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch back on the mayoral race in New York because what you
Sure.
said was an interesting point. I don't want to just breeze over that. This guy, Zohan Mamdini, wins the Democratic primary. And what's a shocker, really, to see that happen, especially where we say we never forget 9/11, and now it's been purely forgotten. This is a guy who wants to defund the police. He's obviously pro-socialism. You're saying, well, you said you want to see this experiment play out so we can see how bad and how much it fails, although that will cause people to suffer in the city.
Yeah, so I'm okay with it in general because it's part of the system. You choose who you voted for. Now, in the primary, I was rooting for Zohan because I think that Andrew Cuomo is so repulsive to me. His nursing home policies during coronavirus, I don't understand how he's allowed to show his face in public. It was that level of bad. Yeah. It was the worst single policy of any American politician I've ever seen, that he crammed sick coronavirus elderly people into confined facilities with not unaffected elderly people who had not yet contracted the virus. That was a death sentence, and he alone was responsible for that. And that is entirely disqualifying from any leadership position. I would pull my kid off of a T-ball team coached by Andrew Cuomo at this point. So I do genuinely believe anyone is better. And by anyone, that even includes, Muslim Marxist socialists. Like, fine, that's still better to me. So that's part of the exercise that I'm doing. But the other thing is, if you're going to have a Democrat, let's see what it really looks like when they get what they want, which is anti-Israel, defund the police. It is pro-socialism. We're going to have government-run grocery stores. Let this experiment play out and let New York be the guinea pig. New York is a filthy city anyway. It's crime-ridden anyway. They vote improperly anyway. It's too expensive anyway. They're already eating themselves alive. Let's just get to the end of it and then see what happens next. That said, I admit, Alec, if Eric Adams, who is going to run as an independent, runs a halfway decent race by the general, I probably will, end up kind of being more supportive of Adams. It feels like Adams wants to work with Trump. He wants to deport some people. I do like that. But overall, I'm very fine with seeing the left get what they have always talked about, which is this Marxism. And let's see how badly it goes for them, so the whole country can be educated on it.
I got to be honest. I'm interested by that response, and I agree with you in some points. So the only issue I have is that the good people in New York that are there that are going to have to suffer as a result of it. It just seems like we kind of know what the result is going to be here. But to your point, let's let it play out. This way we have it to point to and say, hey, look, we tried this in New York. It was a disaster. Knock it off with that stuff. So we can always have a place to point to where they actually got their way and it turned out to be a disaster.
Yeah, you make adjustments. And it's one of these things where I understand if you disagree, but my position, I think, is still a strong position. I live in northern LA County. LA City keeps eating itself alive. It's deeply depressing to me. When the state of California, we had our chance to remove Gavin Newsom. We did a recall. It looked like it was going to be successful. We had a great gubernatorial candidate, Larry Elder, who was my old boss, who's a talk show host and a brilliant individual, a forward-thinking individual, and was the perfect person to lead the state. And we blew that. And the city elections in LA always go badly. And luckily, I'm in a somewhat moderate neighborhood to conservative neighborhood. So not my entire life isn't totally run by the left, but it is entirely my choice. I could move. It is, we got assigned here for my wife's work. She's completed the training that she needed to do when she was here, and it is a real consideration. And so if I'm not happy with what's going on, I can move. Like, it is up to me. So you got to be realistic about it. If you do not want to deal with this and you're a New Yorker, then the good news is that your rent will go down a lot. So you will go somewhere, if you're paying $11,000 a month to live in an apartment, you will go somewhere where you will have a nice quality of life. So you will have some silver linings if you feel like leaving. And if not, you can be a part of the grand socialist experiment and educate the rest of us.
Yeah, I would invest in U-Haul because I think it's going to be popular if this guy wins.
There's a bunch of them over there. They were all leaving California. Now they're going to be going back the other direction.
And Larry Elder is awesome. I've had him on a bunch of times here, and he's the one that they called the black face of white supremacy, and somehow got away with all that. They threw an egg at the guy wearing a monkey mask. It was unbelievable to see that. But I wanted to switch gears here to the NATO trip real quick and get your thoughts on that. He just calling this a successful NATO trip. He got the NATO alliance to kick in 5% GDP, which was what he was asking for. So what I mean, it was kind of seemed like it got downplayed, the NATO trip, because everything else that was going on. But what was your read on the NATO ride?
It's a big thing. So I've been in the news business for 17 years now, I think. And it is really tough because the public can only focus on so much at the same time. It's just a reality. And I think we can focus on, sometimes I feel like we can focus on more things in the hyper social media age. Sometimes I feel like we can only focus on less. And this is a major issue for Trump's domestic agenda, is that we're so consumed with foreign stuff, where Trump is always excellent, consistently excellent. And there's more suspense when it comes to domestic stuff. We don't have time for that, Alec, which is amazing, because now we're moving on from the Middle East. Now we're on NATO. But the good news is Trump is excellent. The NATO countries have committed to spending 5% of their GDP on defense, and that is a huge win for Western civilization. The way he phrased it, that's exactly, I would agree with that. And there was widespread support. You could see the vibes in the room from countries other than, I think Spain didn't like it, but pretty much every other country was kind of on board with it. These are countries spending 2 and 3%. Trump is getting them to defend themselves and not be less dependent on the United States to protect the world. And it's just sensational leadership. It's a huge victory and worthy of a major call out.
It's just crazy because the news, like you said, the way that the media is, it's the viral moment that moves. And so like, the only thing you see out of the NATO is the guy calling him daddy. Like that became the viral moment when Trump dropped the F-bomb. That becomes, so we live in these kind of like short 6-second bursts, and that becomes everything that we focus on.
Yeah, exactly. And so you got to think about, sometimes, is that intentional? Like, obviously, see, I endorse Zohan. And so, that's going to get a reaction, but that's on purpose. Like I want people to react to it because I want people to really think about it from that perspective. But sometimes the viral moment just overwhelms and it's unintentional. And it's just, Trump tends to think out loud. And so a lot of his viral moments, I think, are calculated because he's very smart. And his first draft, so to speak, of his first effort at articulating a thought is generally really good. But occasionally we'll just focus on something that was uttered and doesn't really mean much. And that does come at the expense of other conversations we could be having. But overall, very positive. His foreign policy continues to be A+, and hopefully we'll get back to talking about those deportations and those tax cuts that are coming soon.
Yeah, that was my last take. Was, can we start now moving on to deportations? And the last thing I want to get your take on is this: is the big beautiful bill. This is supposed to now come to the floor. I guess we got to get it through the Senate, back to the House. What do you think of this one big beautiful bill? Are you a fan of it, and do you think it's going to eventually get through here?
Great way of phrasing it, because there's two questions. The first one is, I'll take them in reverse. Is it going to get through? It has to, because if it does not get through, then Trump has no domestic agenda. Democrats are such a mess. I won't guarantee the Democrats win the midterms, but highly likely they'll win the midterms. It will be the biggest tax hike in American history, and it'll be entirely Republicans' fault. So it is going to pass. I would bet my house that there will be a version of this thing that does pass, because I think Republicans know that, and only a couple of the real extreme grandstanders will stand in the way in the end. So I think it's going to be a pass. So the question is, what's in it? Well, overall, we know that it's going to be a monster tax cut, and is going to have monster increase in immigration and customs enforcement spending for facilities and personnel. So for me, that already makes it a gradient on a curve, because all of these omnibus style bills where we're funding a million things at once, they're always terrible. But grading on a curve, that makes it an A+ already. So I'm into it, and I'm rooting for it to succeed. That said, I think there are a lot of pitfalls. I want to make sure that we cut a bunch of Biden's green energy stuff that's apparently still in there for some reason. We have to be very careful. We love entitlement reform, but the political ramifications of cutting Medicaid to rural Americans who voted for Trump and need it, that would be a disaster. So we got to be careful about that stuff. So there's a couple of things that we got to keep an eye on, Alec, overall, but I think there's going to be a big, beautiful win. And I do think this will be one of the better pieces of legislation we see in a decade span.
Yeah, well said. And the one thing I'm not clear on is the AI thing that I had seen going around, and what it was saying we can regulate it, we can't regulate it. I do know that AI is coming like a missile at us, and it's going to be much bigger than any of us really imagine. But do you understand the AI piece that's in there?
I don't, and it's a great thing where we have to be vigilant. And I know we've reporting on it at Breitbart News, but I have not. I'm not up on the latest talking points on it. But again, that is important. We got to be vigilant on there, because the AI is potentially a disaster waiting to happen, and is potentially a place for us to get real genuine benefit, because if some of these AI algorithms are better than the Google search algorithm, for example, that we've been so reliant on for our information, then we have a potential to make the country more efficient and more conservative. We could also put a bunch of people out of work and have a bunch of garbage leftism come as the result of the massive AI adoption that's about to take place. So that's one for a much longer conversation on a different day, Alec.
Yeah.
But you're right to raise the red flag that we need to be able to keep a very close eye on that.
Like anything else, so the positive and negative, like social media, you can promote your business or invite a predator into your home. But you know what I mean? So it works either way, you know.
Exactly.
What do you got? I know you got the Alex Marlow show. What do you got coming on? You got any guests coming on? What are you covering? And hit me with the latest. I got the link down below.
Yeah, I've just been rolling lately. I had a lot of guests in the Senate and recently talking about Big Beautiful Bill, but all around all the time now, and I feel very comfortable just to roll and give the audience my thoughts on that. So thank you though. So yeah, no big guests at the moment, just me talking about the news. It's a daily news show, trying to give you my perspective as editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and why we get so much right. And I think you'll learn a lot from the show. And also going to Breitbart.com every day to get your news is the best resource. You would have been entirely unsurprised by any of the Iran stuff if you got your news from Breitbart, and we're proud of that.
Yeah, Breitbart, one of the best in the business. You, one of the best in the business. The Alex Marlow Show. I got the link down in the description below. Always an honor to have you on. I appreciate you being generous with your time. Thanks for joining me today.
Same to you, Alec. You're very nice and supportive, and we appreciate that. We appreciate your shows.
All right, grateful to have Alex Marlow back on the show. Don't forget to check out the Alex Marlow Show. I got the link to his podcast down there in the description below. I'll tell you, man, he blew my mind a little bit there with his endorsement of this Zoran Mamdini. His take, very, very interesting. My concern, as I said to him, is you do have good people in New York, and you don't want to see it suffer, but this may be what it takes. I mean, he brings up a good point of, hey, let it all play out. Let the chips fall where they may. And then we always have a place to point to say, oh, you want to try that Democrat socialist bullshit again? Look what happened in New York when you got your way, right? When you took out the police and let everyone shoot heroin on the streets. So he's got a good point. I agree with him about Cuomo. I can't believe he showed his face again and tried to get into politics. I think so. I mean, also the point that he brings up is pretty interesting because what was the other choices here? You had that Brad Lander guy who did everything possible to put on a publicity stunt. Following in the footsteps of Alex or Jose Padilla there to try to make himself relevant. But who were the other choices that they had? So obviously, this guy had the backing. This is the push that they're making, and you know what? They want it, and now they're about to get it. So here comes your socialism to New York City. I think it's just sad to see it happen, especially 20-something years after 9/11. To see this go down this way, it's just very, very sad. But this is what they want. This is what they're they try to say. It's going to be different this time. This socialist experiment hasn't worked anywhere in history, but they're like, this time it's going to be different. And I don't see it. So we'll watch how it plays out. There's still a chance here. Eric Adams could very well win re-election. He's running as an independent. I would love to see Curtis Sliwa have a chance. I think he's entertaining. I think he really, truly loves New York City. He is a quintessential New Yorker. I think he will be the best person for the city. I think his chances of winning it are about the same as my chances of playing in the NFL in September. So, unfortunately, that seems to be the reality. All right, so let's switch gears here now. I want to bring on Senator Eric Schmitt. Have not had him on the Alec Lay Show, so brand new to the show. Excited to get him. Been trying to set this up for a couple of weeks now. I want to get into some of this big, beautiful bill, some of these Democrats that are grandstanding against President Donald Trump's ICE deportations, and some more. So I'm grateful to get him. He is Congressman. He is the Senator of Missouri, and I'm grateful to get him on the podcast. Let's bring on Eric Schmitt.
You're listening to the Alec Lay Show. The future is family.
Joining me now, Senator Eric Schmitt. Welcome to the Alec Lay Show.
It's great to be with you.
It's an honor to have you here, and I know that the B-2 bombers took off from Missouri, which had to make you guys prideful over there. Did you have a chance to talk to any of the pilots or any of that, or how did you feel about them coming out of Missouri there?
Yeah, no, we're really proud. I've been to Whiteman several times. It's a pretty incredible place where the B-2s fly out of, and they're just courageous men and women You've got the pilots, you've got the maintainers, you've got a whole unit there that prepares for something like this. They never know when they're going to get the call. They're part of the, the nuclear triad. So it's an important piece of our national defense. And I just think it's kind of remarkable what they pulled off. If you put it in context, you had a couple go to Guam as sort of a deflection, and then you had the others headed east. They refuel a few times in the air, not detected, no signal intelligence, drop those bunker busters from high altitude on something the size of this desk, and accomplish their mission of taking out Iran's nuclear program and get home safely. So it's it may be the most secretive and sort of, I guess, mission maybe we've ever seen. There were no leaks about it, and their execution on it was incredible, really.
It's amazing what we have at our disposal, especially, I have 4 kids. I have a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and I can only imagine these young pilots, what they were capable of. Sometimes we don't give this younger generation some credit, but we have some amazing young men and women that are capable of incredible things here. And sometimes we look at it, we say, I don't know how this generation is going to make it, but when you see things like this get pulled off, it gives you some faith and some hope.
That's right. And we're going to get them. I talked to President Trump about this. We're going to get them over to the White House and make sure they're recognized for that just incredible feat. That and the thing about it is they train for this, but you never know when something like this is going to happen. So their ability to be ready and actually execute like great airmen is just pretty remarkable, like I said.
And of course, all undermined by the fake news media trying to take away the success of the mission. And Trump and Hegseth today just absolutely blasted them for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, look, they obliterated this program. We've got another intelligence briefing with Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio and John Ratcliffe later today. Actually, we'll get more details. But, Israeli intelligence has already been public about it. Even the Iranians have indicated that. So this is, they had a specific mission. They had a specific goal to wipe out and obliterate that nuclear program, and they did it. And again, we're probably the only country in the world who could have pulled that off, and we were able to do it. So yeah, I think it's just sort of another kind of example of Trump derangement syndrome. They just can't. The Democrats and the legacy media aligned with them, they just can't give any credit here. And in many ways, they root against the country at every turn, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's sad to see. But also later today, I know Trump is going to be having a little a thing going on at the White House about the big, beautiful bill. And this is all the talk of the town. I know for you guys down there, especially. Yeah. Well, first, I want to hit on this rescission package. I've heard you speak a lot about it. I mean, this is something we've all been waiting for. So what's your take? What do we expect to see in this rescission package here?
Yeah, so to kind of sort of set the stage here. You've got the reconciliation package that deals with mandatory spending. So there's going to be reforms there, but that's also a place where you're going to have, money for border security and deportations, money for our military, the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime, the extending the tax cuts so middle-class families, make sure they have that tax relief. That's on the mandatory and tax side. Then you have on the discretionary spending side, this rescissions package. And you've got, of course, then on the appropriations process that happens further down the road. So we'll hopefully have wrapped up the reconciliation process, and then in mid-July, because there's a sort of a shot clock for us to do this, I'll be handling that rescissions package that deals with some of the most wasteful spending we've seen that's identified by DOJ. About $9.4 billion worth of spending, whether it's NPR, which is a totally left-wing organization. You've got the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is overwhelmingly has anti-Republican messaging and programming. And then you have some of the USAID programs that people become aware of, like, Sesame Street in Iraq and DEI trainings in Burma and sex change operations in Guatemala, all this crazy stuff that you can't believe your tax dollars are going to fund. We're funded. So the rescissions package then takes that money out as we get leaner and I think a little bit meaner here at the federal level.
And the Democrats are working overtime with the fake news to try to make this sound like, oh, USAID, you're taking away money. Children are dying from it. They're trying to go overboard on all this stuff. And it's like the American taxpayers are seeing where our money is going. And we're saying, wait a second, not only should this be cut out and wiped out of our spending, but also somebody I think should be held accountable for mishandling all these funds and manipulating where all that money is going, because who knows where that money was really going? Because as well as I do, it don't cost like $40 million to put a gay Sesame Street in Iraq. So that money was going somewhere else.
That's right. Well, you're already seeing, I think, one indictment from some of these NGOs. And by the way, it sort of highlights this really kind of permanent Washington connection with these left-wing NGOs that help fuel mass migration. They help fuel censorship. And we're just beginning, quite frankly, to uncover what that was all about. This is the low-hanging fruit, but we ought to be relentless. In fact, I chair a subcommittee on the Judiciary Committee. We're going to continue to look at these NGOs because this is your tax money going to fund organizations that wanted to silence you when you were speaking out against mask mandates or questioning the efficacy of the vaccine or had something to say about Joe Biden or the Hunter Biden laptop. This is all part of the same network. And people go in and out of government to the nonprofit on the left-wing side. And we've got to put an end to it. We've got to make sure it never happens again. But this is kind of the nexus, I think, of the left-wing advocacy that has to be totally exposed. And so part of that is taking the money away, which is what we're going to do here.
And that is what they've done. They've used the media to manipulate the minds of the people to get you thinking in a certain direction, especially now with the big, beautiful bill. Their big talking point is Medicaid. They keep repeating the line over and over again. This is taking away Medicaid from the elderly people. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard the record try to get straightened down on this, but they are still running with the story. You hear them on CNN constantly saying, but the big, beautiful bill is going to wipe out Medicaid for all these senior citizens and all that stuff. What is the truth about what's in the Medicaid? Who's going to lose the Medicaid in this big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because this is one of the biggest lies they continue to tell. And they know it's a lie, but they think it's going to help them politically. The truth of the matter is there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid system. And it takes away, by the way, from the people who was originally designed to help. Pregnant moms, poor kids, and individuals with disabilities, right? That's what that program was originally supposed to be for. And this money that they continue to waste on, by the way, 1.4 million illegal immigrants. They would lose benefits. The American people are behind us for that, but they would lose benefits. And then there would be a work requirement. If you're an able-bodied adult and you're receiving that benefit, you should have a work requirement, and that's what's in this bill. And then there's additional eligibility checks to make sure only the people who are eligible would be getting it. So illegal immigrants are the only group that's going to lose taxpayer-funded benefits here, and then if you're on it, we got to make sure there's a work requirement. That's the truth. So all this other stuff is just nonsense to try to sway, I guess, independent voters that this is something that they shouldn't support. But I think once people know that that's not true, and all of the things that are going to benefit them, there's school choice provisions in here. Again, it would prevent a $2,000 tax increase on the average American household if we don't get this done. So there's a lot of important things in here, including funding border security and deportations.
It's hard to believe, Senator, that was ever a thing where illegal immigrants could get Medicaid or illegal immigrants could get health care. Like, how I don't even know how that came. How did that even become a thing that has to be, taken out? I mean, how did we get to the point where we're giving illegals health care when we have people on the street with no coverage?
That's right. That's right. Well, we're just talking about military men and women, right? The veterans who don't have coverage, but somehow we were putting up illegal immigrants in 4-star hotels in New York and make sure they had every taxpayer benefit under the sun. This is the legacy of Joe Biden. This is what they did. So you had President Autopen there surrounded by a cadre of left-wing radicals who wrote white papers about open borders, who were then literally opening our borders up to anybody. No vetting. You've got national security risk because of it. 15 to 20 million people came here illegally in 4 years, and that was the plan. That was ultimately what they wanted to do. They want to reshape the electorate. They want to make sure they get more electoral votes. You don't have to be a citizen to be counted in the census. That is exactly what they're trying to do. And you didn't need any new laws. You just needed a new president to enforce the laws. And now we have literally like 0 gotaways per month. It's pretty remarkable what President Trump's done. But the next phase of that is mass deportation. So you have to meet mass migration with mass deportations. Otherwise, this could happen again. So that's the goal here. But yeah, it happened because Joe Biden and his team around him wanted it to happen.
And it's the number one reason why Trump won in such a dominating fashion in November was that you have taxpayers watching illegals getting free phones, free health care, free housing, and we're saying, what are we doing here? This something's radically wrong. And to your point, where the Medicaid takes away from the people who need it by giving it to these illegals. It's the same thing with regular car insurance, home insurance. It's the people that are creating the fraud that are jacking up the prices for the regular people. We see that even in the military with the VA, the people that have manipulated. I had Secretary Collins on here. He's going through all those backlogs. You have people that are manipulating that system. They heard it for the guys that really need the benefits. And we're seeing the same thing with the Medicare when you have all these illegals jumping on it.
That's exactly right. And that's what happens. I mean, you saw the amount of spending that increased under Joe Biden and the things that they wanted to be able to do with that money is just really it's the most radical administration that we've ever seen. My previous job, when I was Attorney General in Missouri, we fought back against a lot of that stuff. We won on the vaccine mandate. We won on the student loan debt forgiveness case. Remember, that was another $500 billion just because he thought he could sign it away, evidently with an auto pen. We thought with a pen at the time. All of this debt for people. A theater professor at an Ivy League school thought he could have his debt forgiven by the truck driver who works his ass off all day long, right? So this is the mindset of the modern Democrat Party. And all you need to know, like this isn't, so all of the sort of like, post-mortem that they did after they got, stomped at the polls in November about how they were going to be different. Guess what just happened? They elected this literal communist in New York City, or they're about ready to elect this communist. Certainly the Democrats, he won the primary. So they haven't learned their lessons. I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet, but the good news is President Trump won in that landslide. We've got Republican House, Republican majority, and we want to try to fix some of the problems that were created over the last 4 years.
Well said. And the grandstanding and the political theater that they're putting on about blocking these ICE agents, blocking. Now you had the Supreme Court that ruled in favor of Trump that he could deport these illegals to any country that's going to accept them. And you have an actual federal judge that's saying, I'm not going to listen to the Supreme Court. Now, when they thought Trump was doing that, they said he's a dictator, but now this guy's doing it. He's a hero. So you can't. It's like, which side is it? Is it okay to defy the Supreme Court or is it not? When Joe Biden said, hey, the Supreme Court said I can't pay off your college tuition, but I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, yeah. We love that guy. But now with Trump, they think it's something different. But the grandstanding in the political theater from the Democrats has been up like tenfold since the ICE deportations.
That's right. Every accusation is an admission by them. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and every judicial nominee or appointment that the president had, the Democrats asked that same question. Are you going to defy the law? Are you going to listen to court precedent? And literally the guy that all of them voted on and pushed through in the closing days of the Biden administration, this judge in Massachusetts was the one who actually gave a middle finger to the Supreme Court when they said, no, you actually have to move forward with these deportations. Now, he's ultimately going to get slapped down again, but it just goes to show you, they don't really believe this stuff. They don't believe it because it's all just about raw power. That's it. If COVID taught us anything, it's that the Democrats will maximize all the power that you let them have, even power that they never actually had, to, whether it's censor Americans or force them to, have a vaccine passport. The future was pretty bleak, but I think we're on the other side of that fever dream with President Trump, and we're going to appoint a lot more law and order judges on the bench. But yeah, I think the other thing that's worth noting, a lot of these cases, these district court judges have kind of had their 15 minutes of fame, but as they make their way through the courts, these cases, just like with the Supreme Court on the case that you're mentioning, President Trump, by and large, is going to be successful. It's frustrating when you see those individual decisions, but at the end of the day, he's going to be able to do the things that he ran on.
And it shows the only real audience that they have, or their target audience, is people who have the Trump derangement syndrome, the people who hate Trump, because they can get him to go along with anything. Because we've seen Barack Obama deport. They called him the deporter in chief. Deported over 5 million, 75% of which got no due process, and he's their favorite president. But right. Trump is doing it at a smaller scale, and they're saying, "Oh my God, look what this guy!" And they're actually like standing there defending these people that are murderers, that are rapists. Even I was in the press briefing there with Caroline Levin when she read out some of these crimes, and the media, it washes right over the media there. They don't even care. They can care less about what these people done. They want them to stay here in America, and you can't figure out like whose side are you on. Do you hate the American citizen that much?
Right. Well, and it's a totally misplaced idea of who the victim is, right? They don't identify with the young woman who's kidnapped and murdered. They want some, Venezuelan gang member to be able to be here indefinitely and not deported. That's pretty sick, actually. But that's kind of where they're at. But you're right. Obama deported a bunch of people. Bill Clinton deported millions of people. But when President Trump does it, all of a sudden it's sort of a crime against humanity. They've completely lost any semblance of reality. But the good news is we have immigration laws that when they're enforced, that's exactly because look, the truth of the matter is until the last 4 years, immigration law in this country was if you come here illegally, you are detained. If you have a valid reason for staying, which is very narrow, like asylum claims, which 9 out of 10 are bogus, you might get to stay. But if not, you are deported. That's it. There's no like you get to be here and you're released and you get to stay and you get a court date and sometime in the 2030s. That's what the Biden administration was doing. That's an aberration of, U.S. law. So Trump's just bringing it back to the center here where it should have always been. But they're losing their minds over it because ultimately they have a real problem with America. You've got this kind of cultural Marxism that's seeped into not just universities, but the K through 12 obsession they have with critical race theory or whatever it is, DEI, where every room's divided by oppressor and oppressed, and that's how they view every situation, right? And so, unfortunately, they don't know how to get back on track. Hopefully, again, the voters will continue to recognize this and punish them at the polls because they're completely out of touch.
Yeah, and nowhere does this boggle my mind more. And I gotta get you out of here. But you mentioned the communist that's getting elected there for the Democrat Party in New York City. The liberals seem to hate the nuclear family. They want to crush the patriarchy, but somehow they're okay with this Sharia law. The women are more oppressed in that Islamic culture than anywhere else on the planet. Yet somehow the liberals are like, no, this is what we want. We're okay with that. But if you have a wife who stays home with raise the children, she's oppressed.
Right. Well, it's the same sort of hypocrisy or cognitive dissonance, I guess, when you have a Queers for Palestine,
Right. Yeah.
sign and you're marching around, right? Like it makes no sense. Like it makes no sense. If you're gay and you're around Hamas, you're going to get thrown off a building. So this is just a totally insanity. But this is where they're at.
Yeah, it's wild to see. All right, last thing here. Give me a guesstimate on the timeline. When do you expect the big beautiful bill to get voted on in the Senate here and go back to the House?
Sometime this weekend. We'll be here, and we've got to get through some of the procedural hurdles, and we're still, internally trying to figure out. Like some of this SALT stuff is kind of ridiculous that they've got, quadrupled the SALT deduction to subsidize some of the policies of Pritzker and Newsom. We got to rein that in. So there's still some things that are going to play out in the next day or so here. But I think ultimately we're going to get there. Everybody wants to be able to deliver on President Trump's promises and the policies they're going to, sort of put working families front and center. So I think we'll get there. And my hope is, and I think it'll be this weekend.
What last thing? What is the AI part of this? I know there's been a lot of talk. I'm not really familiar with it. There's an AI thing. We won't be able to regulate AI. Do you know what this is all about that's in there?
Yeah, I think there's a real debate going on right now about what the best way to sort of make sure that some of the actors that have desires to, whether it's a censorship regime or, sort of privacy issues, it gets in the wrong hands. So they're having a debate about that, about the best way to approach that. What does that look like? Is it the federal level or the state level? But making sure that you're sort of out of the way and you don't inhibit people's rights. Because I filed the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit that dealt with this vast censorship enterprise. I certainly don't want to see those kind of same actors have the ability to censor Americans again. So that's kind of where it's at.
Gotcha. All right, Senator Eric Schmitt, and my time is up. It's an honor to have you on the podcast. Love to have you on again down the line. Thanks for joining me today and give me a few minutes of your time.
We'll do it. Thanks.
All right, grateful to Senator Schmitt for joining me on the podcast today. What you guys think about the interview? Hit me with a comment down below. That was pretty cool. I would love to have him back on the show again. That was his first time on the podcast. Again, from Missouri. That's where the B-2 bombers took off from. It's okay to feel some pride in your country when you have a mission success. I know you can either have your agreement or your disagreement on whether or not we should do this. I think if you talk to most people, especially who fought in the 20 years worth of war and lost a lot of their friends because of these Iranian-backed terrorist bastards that were killing our troops, I think they feel a little bit differently than most people do. And I know that, again, that a lot of it is we don't want to see the 20-year war. This is not Trump's idea. Trump is in and out, and let's get the mission done, mission accomplished. Let's move on. Just like he did with the Soleimani hit. The big, beautiful bill, Alex Marlow said, he believes this is going to get passed, some version of it. I do have more faith that it will. So we're going to see how that plays out. One thing I did want to touch on, but before I get you guys out of here, was this Trump sticking up for Bibi Netanyahu in a bizarre, not bizarre, but it was like a very, very long post on Truth Social, like 2-page post about the apparently, and I didn't even really notice, but Bibi Netanyahu is going on trial for fraud or for whatever it may be. Trump laid it out in a kind of way where it kind of exposes what he's going for, on trial for, and then also lending his support, calling it a witch hunt. And so, I kind of feel almost about Netanyahu the way I kind of feel about Zelensky. I don't trust any of these people at all. I trust President Donald Trump. I don't trust all these other politicians. And it just, and I said this, so if you guys who watched Trump is Trending, I spoke about this on there, so you'll be hearing me repeat this, but it's like, where I never saw a tweet, a post, a statement from Bibi Netanyahu when President Donald Trump was on trial. I never saw a post from him when President Donald Trump was accused of I never saw a post from him when Trump was robbed of the 2020 election and set up on January 6th. He called Joe Biden immediately after the election and congratulated him, talked about his relationship with him. So this isn't a guy who has been loyal to President Donald Trump in any means. I have not been able to find a single post, single statement when Trump was going through the Russia collusion and that whole witch hunt, even the Biden laptop. I didn't hear any statements from him on that. I didn't hear any statements of any of it. So it seems to be a relationship that seems to always go one way. That's what's similar to me about the Zelensky thing. It's always like, always got my hand out. Always got my hand out. But Trump made the case for him today. We'll see what that is all about. And hopefully now what we want is to never, ever again have to hear about Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, because we have been told it's been obliterated. The mission is a success. I don't want to hear about it for at least another decade. I don't want to hear, a chance of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. So hopefully we wipe that off the table. That's the important thing. And I am working on guests for next week. I'm scheduled with Jay Thiele, the former NFL kicker, legendary kicker who is now running for Congress for Arizona's 5th Congressional District. So excited to get him on the podcast, working on a few other things. Make sure you follow me on X at Alec Lace to find out any more guest announcements. But that is what I'm working on, what I'm looking at for next week. If you would like to, follow the Trump is Trending podcast that I got going. I drop that usually every day of the week. I got the link to that down below. Don't forget to check out the Alex Marlow Show. I appreciate you guys stopping by the podcast today. And I will be back on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Rumble. All right, so God bless you parents out there. God bless you listeners. God bless our police, our first responders, our military, our veterans. God bless America. And I will catch you guys back here on Rumble on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great weekend.
You're listening to the Alec Lace Show. The future is family.